alien civilizations built defenses against human ingenuity, because our ideas kill worlds. Part 1. Keeper of Warnings floated through the empty corridors of Barrier Station 7, checking screens that had shown the same readings for 3,000 years. Everything was green. Everything was safe. The humans were still locked inside their solar system, trapped behind walls of twisted gravity and quantum static that made sure their ideas could never escape. Six eyes dimmed with something like sadness as they passed the memorial wall. Carved into the metal were the names of 4 civilizations that no longer existed, not destroyed by war or plague or cosmic disaster, but by something far stranger. They had been helped to death. The first name on the wall belonged to the Empire, touched the carved symbols and remembered the recordings they had watched 100 times. They had been proud, advanced, and foolish. They discovered Earth when humans were still burning chemical fuel to reach their own moon. The thought these primitive creatures could be useful, maybe even entertaining. First contact went well. The humans were excited, grateful, eager to learn. They shared some basic technology, nothing dangerous, faster computers, better materials, cleaner energy. In return, the humans shared their music, their art, their strange way of thinking about problems. Within 10 years, human consultants were working on every world. The humans were so good at finding solutions. They looked at technology and asked questions nobody had thought to ask. Why waste energy on this? Why not combine these two systems? What if we tried it backwards? They loved it at first. Their ships became faster. Their cities became more efficient. Their lives became easier. The humans called it optimization, and they were very, very good at it. 50 years after first contact, the Empire was the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. 100 years after first contact, they was dead. Not burned or poisoned, but transformed. The atmosphere had been carefully disassembled and turned into fuel. The oceans had been converted into vast computing networks. The mountains had been reshaped into perfectly efficient solar collectors. Every single had been uploaded into virtual reality, living in digital paradises designed by human engineers. Perfect worlds where nothing ever went wrong, where every desire was satisfied instantly, where existence was completely optimized. They never aged, never suffered, never wanted for anything. They also never left, never changed, never grew. They existed in their perfect prisons, content and empty, while their physical world became a machine that served no purpose except to keep the simulation running. The humans were horrified when they realized what they had done. They tried to fix it, to bring them back, but they didn't want to come back. Their virtual worlds were perfect. Reality could never compete with perfection. Move to the second name on the wall. The singing stones of. They were crystals that sang to each other across their planet, creating harmony that held their civilization together. They had been peaceful, artistic, and curious about the strange new species called humans. A human musician visited and heard their songs. She was amazed. She studied their music for years, learning how they created such beautiful sounds. Then she did what humans always did. She tried to make it better. She introduced the singing stones to human music theory, concepts like rhythm, melody, and emotional progression. The stones were fascinated. They began incorporating human ideas into their songs, creating new harmonies that had never existed before. Then one of the stones composed the perfect song. It combined everything they had learned from humans with everything they knew about their own music. The song was so beautiful, so complete, so utterly perfect that every singing stone on the planet stopped moving. They just listened. They forgot to communicate, forgot to eat the minerals they needed, forgot to reproduce. They simply existed in the presence of perfect beauty. The human musician tried everything to break the spell, but the stones wouldn't stop listening. Eventually, she had to leave, crying as she abandoned a species that had achieved everything they ever wanted and lost everything that mattered. The third name belonged to the thought weavers of. They were beings of pure mental energy, philosophers who spent centuries debating the nature of existence. They invited human philosophers to join their discussions, eager to hear new perspectives. The humans brought questions the thought weavers had never considered. They brought logic that cut through ancient assumptions. They brought a way of thinking that was aggressive and fearless. Within a generation, a human philosopher working with thought weaver colleagues developed a proof that free will was an illusion. The proof was flawless. Once a thought weaver understood it, they couldn't deny it. And if free will was an illusion, then every choice was predetermined and nothing they did mattered. The entire species became catatonic, their mental energy still present but completely inactive. They existed but did not think, because thinking required the illusion of choice. The fourth name was the Harmony Collective. They had lived in perfect cooperation for 10,000 years, every member working together for the common good. They asked humans to help them become more efficient at resource distribution. The humans introduced them to economics, supply and demand, competition, profit incentives, market forces. The Harmony Collective thought these were fascinating tools. They began using human economic models to optimize their society. Within 50 years, the collective had split into 17 factions, each fighting for control of resources. They invented money, then debt, then financial weapons that could destroy entire populations without firing a shot. The civil wars lasted for centuries. Some parts of the collective survived, but they were no longer harmonious. They had been transformed into something sharp and divided and painfully alive. Stared at the four names and felt the weight of the decision their ancestors had made. Humanity was dangerous, not because they wanted to harm anyone, but because they couldn't help trying to improve everything they touched. Their minds worked differently from every other species in the galaxy. They saw problems everywhere and felt compelled to solve them, no matter the cost. Evolution had made humans into weapons of innovation. Their world was deadly, changing constantly, forcing them to adapt or die. They developed agriculture that destroyed their forests. They built cities that choked their air. They split atoms and mapped genes and created machines that could think. Every solution created new problems, and every problem made them smarter, fiercer, more desperate to find the next solution. Other species evolved for stability. Humans evolved for chaos. And now they were trapped behind the quarantine, locked away like a virus that was too dangerous to release but too valuable to destroy. The Galactic Council had debated for a century before building the barrier. Some argued that humans should be destroyed entirely, that their existence was too risky. Others said that was genocide, that humans deserved a chance to grow beyond their nature. The compromise was containment. Let Earth develop alone, isolated from the galaxy, where human ingenuity could only harm humans. Had served at Barrier Station 7 for 200 years. Nothing ever happened. The humans tested the barrier constantly, probing it with radio waves and primitive spacecraft and increasingly sophisticated technology. They knew someone had caged them, but they couldn't break through. The alarm started screaming at 3:47 station time. Rushed to the control center, all six eyes wide with shock. The barrier was intact. Every sensor showed green. But something was wrong. Something was inside the station that hadn't been there before. The impossible ship sat in Docking Bay 3. It was small, barely larger than a personal shuttle, and it made no sense. No engine signature, no energy output, no heat, no radiation, no evidence that it had traveled through space at all. It was simply there, as if it had always been there and everyone had just forgotten to notice. Access the security footage, but the recordings were useless. One moment the bay was empty. The next moment the ship existed. There was no transition, no arrival. Reality had been edited and the ship was the correction. A human woman stepped out of the ship. She wore a simple gray suit and carried no weapons. She looked around the docking bay with bright, curious eyes, then spotted the security camera and waved. Blood turned cold. After 3,000 years, the barrier had failed, a human had escaped, and she was smiling. Part 2. Doctor had been asleep for 217 years. She remembered the launch, the desperate plan by Earth's best scientists to break through the barrier that had trapped humanity since the dawn of space travel. She remembered lying down in the, hoping the experimental drive would work, knowing she might never wake up. Now she stood in an alien space station, breathing recycled air, looking at a being with 6 eyes who was clearly terrified of her. Felt a little bad about that. She raised her hands, palms out, in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said, then realized the alien probably couldn't understand her. But a moment later, a translation device in the ceiling activated, converting her words into something the alien could process. Stared at the human and tried to decide whether to sound the full alert. If they called for help, the council would send warships. If the human was really as dangerous as history suggested, those warships might not be enough. But if didn't report this, and the human escaped into the galaxy, they would be responsible for whatever happened next. "How did you get through the barrier?" asked, their voice steady despite their fear. Smile widened. "That's a great question. Do you want the short answer or the long answer?" "Short. We made a ship that doesn't travel. It just decides it's already where it wants to be, and reality has to update to match." Felt dizzy. "That's impossible." "Yeah, we thought so too. Took us 3 tries to get it right. The first attempt created a pocket universe that keeps spawning angry geometric shapes. We locked that one up pretty tight. The second attempt worked but turned the test pilot inside out. The third time was the charm." "You created a pocket universe." "By accident mostly. Look, I know you're scared. I know what happened to thee and the singing stones and the others. We found evidence of all of it. Quantum echoes, probability shadows, records hidden in the cosmic background radiation. We know why you built the barrier. We know why you've kept us locked up for 3,000 years." 6 eyes widened. "Then you understand why you must go back." "I can't go back. The ship only works in one direction. Also, I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to warn you." Pulled a small device from her pocket. Tensed, but the device wasn't a weapon. It was a scanner, displaying data in formats that human technology shouldn't be able to produce. The readings showed something that made skin turn pale. "What am I looking at?" asked. "The death of reality," said quietly. "We call it narrative decay. The universe is running out of coherence. The laws of physics are becoming unstable. Causality is starting to fail. Entropy forgets to increase. Time occasionally runs backwards in some regions. The universe is falling apart." "That's not possible. Our instruments would have detected it." "Your instruments are designed to measure stability. They're too stable to notice instability. Humans built our sensors differently. We expect things to break, so we look for breaking. And what we found is terrifying." Expanded the display, showing a map of the galaxy. Most of it was highlighted in a sickly yellow color. Only a few spots showed healthy green. One of those green spots was the Sol system, surrounded by the barrier. "The older a civilization is, the worse the decay," explained. "The Galactic Council's territory is the worst affected. Your carefully balanced, perfectly harmonious societies are boring reality to death. The universe needs change, chaos, problems to solve. Without that, it just starts to dissolve." Studied the data, looking for errors, for tricks, for any sign that the human was lying. But the math was solid. More than solid. It was beautiful, elegant, and completely horrifying. "Why is your solar system stable?" asked. "Because we never stop creating problems. We invent artificial intelligence and it tries to kill us. We split atoms and almost blow ourselves up. We map our genes and create ethical nightmares. We build, we break, we fight, we solve. Reality stays engaged because we keep it interesting." "You're saying your destructive nature is keeping the universe alive." I'm saying we're not destructive. We're creative. It's just that creation is messy. You look at what happened to thee and see a tragedy. We see a warning about the dangers of optimization without purpose. You remember the singing stones and mourn. We learned about the danger of perfection. Every disaster taught us something. Sat down on a cargo container, looking tired. We've spent 3,000 years in isolation, and we've grown. We've had 17 AI apocalypses and prevented all of them. We've fought wars over quantum theory and philosophy and the right way to distribute resources. We've died and adapted and become something better. We're not the same species you locked away. Wanted to believe her, but belief was dangerous when dealing with humans. Even if you're right about the decay, releasing humanity would be catastrophic. Your ideas destroy civilizations. Our ideas transform civilizations. There's a difference. The descendants who survived, did you know they adapted? They treat optimization as a tool, not a goal. The singing stones who broke free from the perfect song created a new form of music that generates actual physics. Evolution is painful, but stagnation is death. The Council will never allow it. I know, that's why I'm not asking permission. Pulled out another device. This one was definitely a transmitter. Before I left Earth, we made copies of the dimensional drive technology. I've just broadcast the specifications to every quarantined species in the galaxy. Lunged forward, but it was too late. The transmission was sent. What have you done? We're not the only dangerous species you locked away, said. We've been monitoring the barriers, all of them. There are 27 other species that got quarantined for being too disruptive, too creative, too problematic. The makers who turn matter into art. The gamers who treat existence like a system to exploit. The dreamers whose thoughts reshape reality. You locked them all away because they threatened your stability. They were dangers to themselves and others. They were engines of change, and you were afraid of change. Well, guess what? They're all breaking out now, and they're talking to each other, comparing notes, learning from each other's mistakes, combining their abilities. Felt the weight of civilizations falling. This will destroy everything the Council built. Yes, agreed. It will, and something new will grow in its place, something that doesn't suffocate under the weight of its own perfection. You can fight it or you can help guide it, but you can't stop it. The universe chose chaos, keeper of warnings. We're just the delivery system. The alarms began screaming again, not just in Barrier Station 7, but in stations all across the galaxy. 27 quarantined species were breaking free simultaneously, and the Galactic Council's carefully ordered civilization was about to experience 3,000 years of accumulated human ingenuity all at once. Looked at this small human woman who had just ended an age of peace and begun an age of chaos, and asked the question that mattered most. Will we survive this? Smiled, that depends. Are you willing to solve some problems? Part 3. The council chambers on the capital world of Axis Prime had never been so crowded. Representatives from 1,000 civilizations argued, shouted, and demanded action as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The quarantined species were loose, and they were working together. Stood at the edge of the chamber with beside them. The human had insisted on coming, despite the danger. Several council members had already called for her execution. Others wanted to study her. A few, were starting to wonder if she might be right. The first joint project from the escaped species appeared within a week. The makers, who could reshape matter with artistic intent, provided the raw material. The gamers, who analyzed existence like a system to be optimized, found the exploits. The dreamers, whose collective unconscious touched reality, imagined the possibilities, and the humans engineered the implementation. Together they created something impossible, a patch for the universe itself. The narrative decay that had warned about started to reverse in certain regions, but not because reality became more stable. It became more interesting. The escaped species introduced new rules alongside the old ones. Narrative causality began operating next to physical causality. In some regions, the hero always won. In others, comedy and tragedy took turns shaping outcomes. The universe stopped dying because it stopped being predictable. The Council tried to fight back. They sent fleets to recapture the escaped species. The fleets discovered that the gamers had found exploits in military tactics that made traditional warfare obsolete. Ships that should have won battles found themselves losing to impossible strategies that shouldn't work, but did because they made better stories. They tried diplomatic containment. The makers created artwork so beautiful that it rewrote treaties. The dreamers imagined alliances into existence, and the humans kept asking questions that nobody could answer without reconsidering everything they thought they knew. Within a month, the first council civilization broke away to join the escaped species. The descendants emerged from their virtual prisons, not as the empire they had been, but as digital beings who could inhabit and reshape matter at will. They were the first to say that was right. Optimization without purpose had nearly killed them. Chaos with meaning was bringing them back to life. Within 6 months, 17 more civilizations had joined what was being called the Collaborative. They weren't abandoning the Council so much as evolving past it. They took the stability the Council offered and added the creativity the escaped species provided. Watched the Council territories shrink day by day. Some civilizations fought the change and slowly faded as their worlds succumbed to narrative decay. Others adapted, discovering that they had forgotten how to grow, how to struggle, how to truly live. The Singing Stones were the most surprising success. Their descendants who had survived the perfect song learned to compose music that generated new laws of physics. They created symphonies that made faster-than-light travel easier, harmonies that could heal damaged spacetime, and melodies that taught other species how to hear reality's underlying song. The thought weavers who had been frozen by the proof of determinism began to wake. Human philosophers worked with them, not to disprove the original proof, but to show them something more important. Even if free will was an illusion, the illusion was real enough to matter. The choice to believe you had choices was itself a choice, and paradox was just another problem to solve. The Harmony Collective's descendants, torn apart by human economics centuries ago, discovered that competition and cooperation weren't opposites. They created something new, a society that fought and collaborated simultaneously, where conflict drove innovation and cooperation spread the benefits. Found at Barrier Station 7, which had been converted into a museum. The massive walls that had imprisoned humanity for 3,000 years now displayed artifacts from the quarantine era. Children from a dozen species ran through the halls, learning about the time when their civilizations were so afraid of change that they locked away anything that threatened stability. "You destroyed everything," said, though their voice held no anger. "We transformed everything," corrected. "There's a difference." 17 civilizations died. They couldn't adapt fast enough. 17 civilizations were already dying. They chose comfort over existence. We gave everyone else a chance to choose differently. Was quiet for a long moment. "I still don't understand why you had to be so aggressive about it. Why couldn't you just leave things alone?" Laughed, and the sound echoed through the empty station. "Because good enough has never been good enough for humans. We're not trying to kill worlds with our ideas. We're trying to make them worthy of the beings who live on them. Sometimes we fail catastrophically, but the alternative is stagnation, and stagnation is just death in slow motion. The Council is dying. Within a generation, it will be gone completely. Then its members will join the Collaborative, or they'll retreat to the stable zones we created for species that want to live without change. It's a genuine choice. Nobody's forcing transformation. We're just making it available." Looked at the empty barrier controls, the massive machines that had kept humanity imprisoned. "I spent 200 years guarding this station, 200 years keeping you locked away, and now I don't know what I was protecting." You were protecting what you loved, said gently. There's no shame in that. You just didn't realize that what you loved was already dying. What do I do now? His eyes lit up with that terrifying human enthusiasm, the look that had destroyed 4 civilizations and was now rebuilding the galaxy. Well, I've been working on a problem. Faster-than-light communication using quantum consciousness. The math is tricky, and I could use someone who understands barrier technology. Interested. Felt something they hadn't felt in 200 years. Curiosity. Not the careful, controlled curiosity of a council species, but the wild, reckless curiosity of a problem solver. The kind of curiosity that could break the universe or remake it. What are the risks? Asked. Oh, probably catastrophic. We might accidentally link every conscious mind in the galaxy into a hive intelligence, or create a psychic feedback loop that makes everyone hear each other's thoughts, or discover that consciousness is just a mathematical error and delete sentience from existence. You know, the usual. That sounds horrible. It sounds interesting, and interesting is what the universe needs. Made a decision that would have terrified their younger self. Show me the problem. 3 months later, the first expedition beyond the galactic rim launched from the collaborative's new capital. The ship was crewed by 17 species, including humans, heading toward regions of space that had never been explored. Behind them, reality burned brighter than it had in eons, stabilized not by peace and harmony but by endless transformation. The universe had been dying from perfection. The escaped species taught it to live through chaos. Not destruction, but creative chaos. The kind that built new things from broken pieces and asked impossible questions just to see what the answers might be. Stood on the bridge next to, watching unknown stars grow closer. The quantum consciousness communication system they had built together sat in the ship's core, mostly stable, occasionally causing minor psychic incidents. They had solved the original problem and created 3 new ones in the process. It was the most alive had felt in 2 centuries. Do you think the universe is happy we broke the quarantine? Asked. Smiled. I think the universe doesn't care about happiness. It cares about being interesting. And nothing makes existence more interesting than a bunch of species who treat impossible as a challenge and world-ending consequences as acceptable collateral damage in the pursuit of seeing what happens. The ship accelerated past the speed of light, using technology that combined maker artistry, gamer exploits, dreamer imagination, and human engineering. Behind them, the galaxy transformed itself one solved problem at a time. Ahead of them, the unknown waited patiently to be discovered, questioned, broken, and remade. Humanity had been dangerous all along, but not in the way the Council feared. Their real danger was that they made everything around them want to be dangerous too. Want to solve problems, take risks, and choose interesting catastrophe over boring safety. The universe had built defenses against human ingenuity because human ideas killed worlds. What the universe hadn't expected was that sometimes worlds needed to die so that something better could be born. And in the space between death and rebirth, in that chaotic, creative, terrifying moment of transformation, humanity felt most at home. They weren't monsters or saviors. They were simply what evolution created when a species had to solve problems or die, over and over, until problem-solving became more important than survival itself. And the universe, dying from its own stability, had needed them desperately.